Hi students, I'd like to talk to you about how to lay out the veneers for the top of a pattern that we had discussed in a prior video. Now, before we get started with any of that, there's a couple things that we have to do and we have to discuss before you can go ahead and lay those out. It'll be incredibly difficult for you to complete this task or to create this pattern if you don't take into account a couple things first. The first thing I want to talk about is how our squares are made up, okay? And these are made up with 4 different veneers. There's walnut, cherry, macrame, and enegre, okay? Those are the 4 veneers that we've selected for the top of this project. Now I noticed something, that if one veneer was just taken out of place and it created a square, there's no way to create the pattern that we're looking for in the top. So what I've done here is I've laid out 16 pieces of the squares that were done perfectly. And when I say they're done perfectly, what I mean by that is that when the 4 pieces were taped together, all the corners matched up and it was in the right pattern, or it was always continuously the same. So with that, I'm going to show you exactly what I've done here, so that way we can lay out the pattern exactly, so that way it can be duplicated. Okay, so here we have the strip. Now of course I have my painter's tape and I have 2 cutting utensils that are sharp. This is a scalpel with a small blade, a X-Acto knife which isn't quite as sharp, and then I have obviously a straight edge ruler, 24-inch ruler. Now, if we take a look at these pieces here, what I did was I laid this out so that way I know they're all exactly the same. So what I did was I put the walnut piece at the bottom on all of these, going all the way across the whole thing. So I'm like, okay, now I have all walnut. All right, that's good. Now, working clockwise, I know that I have enegre, 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 all across on that spot there. Now, maybe I should just go ahead and separate these just a little bit, so that way you can see that there is a space between the 2, so it's not so hard to decipher which piece is to which. Now, before you go ahead and do this, remember, you have to cut, or you have to have the squares have to be exactly, or I'm sorry, they have to be cut apart. They cannot be put together. Not yet. What we're striving for is for that to happen. Okay, so now I think that might be a little bit easier for you to see. Is that I've lined all of these up in a row, so that way it's far easier to tell if they are in the same setup or the same way that they were glued up. Taped. Okay, so at the very bottom, you're gonna have the walnut. Very top, you're gonna have the macrame. And then, I don't wanna use north, south, east, and west, so like I'll just say, on the right side, you're gonna have cherry. The left side, you're gonna have enegre. And then, I'm just going to zoom in here so you can see every single one of these exactly the same. Okay? Now I would suggest, if you're going to go ahead and make a top that's going to look like this, to be very decorative with the veneers, that you go ahead and do the same exact thing, so that way you can ensure that this works out perfectly. My suggestion is not to try and tackle all this at one time. Don't say, oh, I'm going to block out 8 hours and just try doing this for 8 hours. I think that it might be a little bit too overwhelming to do something like that. I would say block off certain amounts of time with little breaks in between or something like that. And I wouldn't try and push to try and get this done in a relatively really fast way. Make sense? Okay. So I'm going to take my 17th piece, which is not needed. This is just for demonstration purposes. I'm just going to set this over here, out of the way, off my green mat. Okay? Now I'm going to take the first 4 of my veneer pieces. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take and have the macrame at the top, and I'm going to rotate this in a 90 degrees clockwise. So now I'm just going to pick the veneer of the macrame. So the macrame is at the top, at the 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock positions. So now it's rotated 90 degrees each way. I'm going to take 3 more pieces, and then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to rotate these as well. Going down. Okay. I will show you this a little bit more, close up in a minute. Now I'm going to take 3 of these. Go ahead and lay this out. So it's 90. I will show you, like I said, this in a moment, so that way you can see exactly how this is put together. Okay? And I'm just rotating it again. And I will give you a still, so that way you can see exactly, if you want to just pause your computer at a specific spot, you can see exactly how this is going to look. Okay. Alright, so now I have these in the pattern that we need for our top. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause this, and I'm going to set up the camera so I can zoom in a little bit closer for you. So remember, I'm Mr. C, and if you give me a thumbs up, and in your comment section you tell me exactly something you learned, I can go ahead and give you some extra credit. Alright? So until next time, I'll zoom in. Just give me a minute. See you, okay?